Hello students, welcome back to Mr. Labour's Computing Classroom. Okay, right, so in this theory module what we're going to be doing is looking at how computers are like classrooms, because the reason we're going to do that is because we all understand how classrooms work, and if we can associate to computers like classrooms, then it's going to give us a better idea how computers work. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is where we do our work. Now we all know that in a classroom that we do the work on a desk there, which we call the desktop. So that's where all the work gets done. And it's exactly the same on the computer. We do our work on what we call a desktop, which we're all familiar with, and the reason is because they're very much similar, and it's where we do our work. So that's a very important concept. Okay, so the next thing is, who are the workers? Well, we know that in a classroom that the workers are the students. The students are doing all the work, and then when you change over to a computer, the work is done by what's called the CPU, or the processor, the central processing unit, and that's what does all the work in a computer. Now the interesting thing is here that we can't really see it in this classroom, but imagine these students were out in the oval and they were running up and down the field, and in which case you're doing a lot of work then. Well, what's going to happen to those students there is, because they're doing a lot of work, running backwards and forwards up and down the field, what they're doing is they're getting very hot, okay? And it's exactly the same with a processor. When a processor is doing lots of work, it gets very hot. So that's a result of doing work. You generate heat. Okay, so that's what is doing the work in a computer. The processor's doing the work in a computer, the students are doing the work in the classroom. Okay, so in a classroom, if we're going to do some work, we need to have some tools. Now, in the classroom, our tools are likely to be pencils or paintbrushes if we were making a painting, pens. Those are all what we call tools. Now, if we switch over to a computer, then we would get our tools by accessing them through the Start menu. And there's a whole heap of tools there. The tools that we're most familiar with are things like Word, Paint, Publisher, PowerPoint, those sorts of tools, which are all made by Microsoft, those ones that I've listed. But those tools in a computer are called programs or applications. That's the name of what our tools are in a computer, and the word applications has been shortened to apps. So if we're doing work, we're using our tools, and then we need to do the work on something. Now we'd call that materials, and usually what we'll be doing the work on will be a piece of paper like that. And once we've done our work on the piece of paper, we've used our tools on the material to write whatever we want to write down. Then what we've produced is we've produced a letter, or maybe it's a drawing or a painting or a story or anything like that. That is what we're actually making. Now on a computer we do a very similar thing. We use a tool. The material is the material, when we open up something like a Word document, gets presented as a piece of paper on that Word document, and that's what we write our letter on, or whatever we're doing. Now once we save that, what's happening is we're producing a file or a document, which is what we've actually made. So the file or the document, as you can see in this picture here, these are all actually painting documents. This is what we've actually produced. It's exactly the same as a written letter or a drawing or a painting that we would have in the classroom. Okay, so once we've produced our document or our file, then, or if we're in a classroom, we've produced our letter, painting, then what we do is we'd want to save our work. Okay, so when we save it, we're going to put it into a bookshelf. That's what we do in a classroom. Now, when it comes over to a computer, we would actually save it on what's called a hard drive or a disk. Now, these disks here, each of these is a drive or a disk. These could be located anywhere. Now, if you're logged on at school, you could have any number of these. Now, the one to note is what, well, I suppose the first thing to note is that each drive or disk is referred to with a letter. This one's the letter C, we've got an A here, E, F, G, H. And these can be located in completely different locations. They may not be near you. But if we have a look at this one here is the C drive. Oops, I've just covered it up. And the C drive is an important one because that is always located on the computer that you're using. So that's worth remembering. The C drive is always located on the computer that you're actually using. These other drives, they could be located anywhere. Now, you working at school, you're likely to have a drive there called My Documents, which is where you're going to be saving your work. However, that drive will not be on the computer that you're using at the moment. That's likely to be in the administration building somewhere located around the school. And there's another drive that you will have if you're logged on at school, and that's going to be a shared drive, a drive where you can go and get your work or you're going to hand your work in. Now, that also is not going to be located near you. That's also probably going to be located in the administration building. But it's going to show here, which is going to allow you to save your work there or get your work from it. Okay, so anyway, this is where we save our work. We save it on hard drives or disks. Each drive is known by a letter of the alphabet, and it is just like a bookshelf like this. Now, when we save our work on the bookshelf, we need to organize our work. Organisation is very important. With good organisation allows us to find our work when we want to find it. So what we do in a classroom, if you've got a system like this, you organise it into drawers and into folders, and then inside the folders you can see pieces of paper. Those are our actual documents. Okay, now the important thing with organisation is good naming so that you can find your work. So these are probably all listed alphabetically. It'll be something like A, B, C, D, E, and then when you go into the folders, who knows what sort of system they've got here, but it's all logical and it's all organised so everything can be found properly. When you come over to your computer, you've got exactly the same thing. With inside your disks or your drives, you can create these folders, and you can then, inside the folders, you can put your documents. Now, for good organisation, you need to have everything named logically so that you can find things properly. And we've already talked a little bit about that, and hopefully you've got yourself a good organised system, because being able to find your work is one of the most important things. Now, one thing that is a little bit different in a computer that is different from the classroom, although it's possible in a classroom to put a folder inside a folder, it's not really going to be done very often. But what you can do in a computer is you can have one folder put inside another folder, and even another folder put inside that folder. So you can do what's called stacking the folders, and that allows you a much better organized system than what you're able to achieve in the classroom. But good organization is critical, very important, and something that you need to be doing as part of your practice at school here. Okay, the doorway to the world. Right, in your classroom, if you want to get out of the classroom, you'd walk out the door, and once you're out that door, you can go anywhere in the world. Now, it's very similar to a computer, but you don't have what's called a door or a doorway. We have what's called a network port. And once if you want to get out into the world, in which case you'd be going onto the internet, because the internet allows you to access anywhere in the world, you'd have to go out through your network port. And that is part of what you're going to learn a lot more about in our networking videos. But that is the way to get out of the computer, out through the network port. Obviously there's a big difference between a classroom and a computer, in the fact that once you're out of the doorway, it may take you, who knows, 2 or 3 days to get to the other side of the world. If you are on a computer, you can get something from the other side of the world in just less than a second. So another big advantage of the computers, and one of the reasons why computers have changed the world immensely over the last 20 years or 30 years. Okay, so in a classroom we have a window, and a window allows us to look outside and see what's going on. Now, it's slightly different in a computer. We do have these things these are forms which are actually called windows, and it's a very important concept, and it's why all of Microsoft has named all their operating systems Windows. We've got Windows 10, and we've had in the past Windows 3, Windows 7, Windows ME. There's been probably 10 or a dozen different Windows operating systems. At the moment we're in Windows 10. But the concept in a computer of Windows is that once you click on the bar at the top there, or anywhere within this window or within this form, then this form or this window has the focus. And that means that it allows you to, any keyboard presses that you are doing, it's going to happen within that window. Now, one of the things about Windows operating systems is that there can only be one window have the focus at one time. So that makes it a single user environment, and that's exactly what we're all used to, and it works very well. Okay, so these are windows, they're called forms, and the other thing is, the other type of window is a dialogue, which is a small pop-up form that pops up and will often give you a message or a warning or something like that. But the Windows concept is very important, and we'll be learning more about that when we start coding. Okay, so in the classroom, your classroom has an address, and that address is very important. It allows anybody in the world to send to your classroom a message or a parcel or anything that they like. And this is the sort of address that you're going to have in your classroom, whatever it might be. But every place in the world has got an address. Okay. Now, your computer, it also has an address, and it looks a little bit like this here, but it's a numbered address, and it's called an IP address. Okay, IP stands for Internet Protocol. Now it's got a lot of numbers in it like this, because computers work with numbers, they don't actually work with words and names. So yes, it has an address, and what it allows is that if you are wanting something in the world from the internet, so you go and click on something, it might be a web page or something like that, when the server at the other end sends back that web page or sends back whatever it is, it knows what address that you are at, and it knows whereabouts to send back that web page. And this is something else that we're going to learn a lot more about and understand, get a lot better understanding when we start working with web technologies, and also your networking modules, which will be coming along shortly. But at the moment, it's good just to know that every computer, when you're connected to the network, you have an address, and it's going to look something like that. It's going to be called your IP address, and it allows any place in the world to contact you through your IP address. Okay, so in the classroom we have a manager, and the manager is going to be the teacher, and what the teacher is doing is he is managing all the students who are doing the work and just telling them what to do and what's going to happen. Okay, so in a computer, the computer itself doesn't have the manager. It is you as the user of the computer. You are the one that manages the computer. You are the one that controls it and tells the computer what to do. And that can be doing your work, whatever you're doing, or it could even be developing that computer to make it a better computer than what it is. And we're going to learn more about that coming up in the next slide. Okay, the capabilities or the abilities of the classroom and the capabilities or the abilities of the computer. Well, let's start with the classroom. So what you can do in the classroom, the type of work that you're doing depends on the students that you've got. Obviously, if you're in a primary school, a very low grade, early schooling, they're not going to be doing the same type of work as what you're going to be doing in your age group, or even the same type of work as what you're going to be doing in the next couple of years, where you're going to be doing a lot harder work. And you can do that because of the education that you've received. As you learn more, it allows you to do more. Okay. Now, in a computer, the capabilities of a computer, what the computer can do, depends on the software installed. Now, for the computer to do more, to have more capabilities, you obviously need better or more software. So that can be done by installing more software, or if you are capable of it, you can develop your own software. And that's something that we're going to start learning to do when we start the coding module, which you'll be doing shortly. Okay, so the capabilities of the computer depend on the software installed, and the capabilities of a classroom depends on the students that you have in that classroom. Okay, so here we are in the final slide now, and what I want to do is just summarize the work. We've talked about what the work on a few of those slides, and you guys, I want you to find out, if you're not sure about these answers, you're going to have to provide the answers in the worksheet. The first one, where is the work on a computer done? Make sure that you understand that. Where is the work done? Find the slide that associates with that. What does the work on a computer? Can you remember what actually does the work on a computer? Try to relate it to what does the work in a classroom. And if you can understand what does the work in a classroom, then relate that to what does the work in a computer. Remember, or when you're doing work, thinking about what happens. What happens when you do a lot of work? You get hot, okay? It's exactly the same with a computer. What does the work on a computer? That also gets hot. Okay, and finally, where is the work on a computer stored? So once you've done the work, you've created what you want to do, where is that work on a computer stored? And think about it with a classroom. So there we go, you guys. What we've done is we have had a look at a classroom, because we all understand how classrooms work. We've matched that up with a computer, and I've shown you how it all works very similar. And what you will have also probably realized as we went through that is that a lot of the wording is the same in a classroom as well as it is in a computer. And the reason that it is the same wording is because it allows us to understand what's happening in a computer a whole lot easier, because we all know how the real life works. Okay, so there you go, you guys. Make sure you hand that worksheet in. Please get as many, if not all, of those answers correct, and then you guys can move on to the next lesson.